So, good evening. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ, and I struggle with chemical dependency, criminal addictive thinking, pride and control issues. My name is Rudy. So, my story is a rather long one, and I'll try and stick to the highlights. But I will make an effort not to focus too much, only focus on the relevant. I don't want to glorify the past, but that's want to glorify God. Amen? So here we go. I was the firstborn of 5 kids. I have 1 younger brother and 3 younger sisters. At an early age, I started to get into trouble at school. Just normal kid stuff, you know? But as time progressed, it continued. I excelled academically, and I always got A's and everything, but my behavior didn't quite match. It was all bad. One of my teachers discovered what was wrong with me. I was just bored. So throughout my elementary school years, I walked myself to school and back every single day. I had to go home by myself, let myself in, pick up the house, and make myself something to eat. Do my homework, and then play outside with my friends. No one checked my homework. No one asked how my day went or what happened at school. Mom and Dad were always working. I was a latchkey kid. When I started junior high, nothing changed. Same old story. Only now, I just wanted to fit in with the crowd. Any crowd, it didn't matter. I was thirsty for attention, acknowledgement, and recognition that I didn't get at home. My mom was there because she really wasn't there. We talked and she was a good friend, but she was my mom. I needed my dad, but my dad was always too busy with work, the racetrack, his friends, and the women at the bars. I could count on one finger, how many times he actually took us out as a family. I'll never forget, it was really cool. We went and watched an Indiana Jones movie. My mom tried to talk to me when I needed a man in my life. I'd see other kids with their dads, but mine was always somewhere else. In elementary school, when there were school events, award ceremonies, or anything else, my parents, they could never make it. They were always at work or in a hurry. I didn't get the attention I desperately needed by doing good in school, so in junior high, I started to do bad. And it was an instant rush to see people cheer me on and pat me on the back for being a knucklehead. I still got good grades, and I was failing miserably at acting civilized though. I scored well on all of my tests, and there was even talk about me attending a private school back east for a paid scholarship. But there was a problem. I had just gotten introduced to a street gang. These guys were the business. They were cool. I started ditching class, going to ditching parties, and my grades were still up. I'd puff on an occasional cigarette, and it'd stick to my stomach afterwards. But I continued to do so as long as the people thought I was cool. Then at a certain ditching party, somebody started passing joint around. Of course, I didn't pass up the opportunity when it was offered to me. I was a straight square, you know. The joints turned into 40 ounces, then liquor, then cocaine. But even though I used chemicals to be accepted, they were never really my thing. My hang-up was respect. That was crush. So as I started to hang around the homies, I was always the biggest. I was always the strongest. So when a fight started, I was always the first target. So my reputation started to build, and I was earning respect in the streets of being a tough guy. But in reality, I wasn't. Deep inside, I had no clue what I was doing, or what I was getting myself into. I just knew that it felt cool to be respected. All that attention I didn't get at home from my parents, I was now getting on the streets with the homies. All those pats in the back I didn't get from my grades, and the certificates I was now getting from my homeboys. And man, it felt really good. This is what I was longing for, the sensation and feeling of belonging. They gave me love, they listened to what I had to say at the end of each day, and they even asked me how my day went. They were not my family. This new family was awesome. My parents didn't know anything about gangs because they were born and raised in Mexico. So I pulled the wool over their eyes quite a bit. There was never any doubt as to the integrity of what I told them because they had no idea what me and my homies were doing. I mean, we wouldn't really steal cars, right? We just borrow and give it back. We go partying and gangbanging, and then we eventually abandoned them. There were girls too, and I had a couple girlfriends. But honestly, I wasn't a kid back then. I was more into gangbanging. My thing was that you know, I wanted to gangbang. I was on a mission to build up my reputation, and I wanted people to know who I was. Anybody could do it on the street, right? I wanted to do it where the big dogs were, in prison, where the real tough guys were. After a year at juvenile camp, I did 3.5 years in the youth authority. I had finally made it to the county. It was like graduating, I had finally done it, you know? So now all my training, my street education, were to be implemented as I continue my journey in building up my reputation. But unfortunately, the reason that I was there was one of the worst. I was now fighting a life sentence, but it didn't matter to me. It's where I wanted to be. I heard talk to God, and I would do the sign of the cross before I walked into a courtroom, but that was about it. That's about as far as I went with God. I was more worried about what my homies thought about me. It's funny that even though I didn't care about him, he still looked out for me. I ended up going to prison for almost 3 years again, and my mission continued in there, getting involved with the wrong people for the wrong reasons. I wanted to be in the middle of anything and everything. I wouldn't even volunteer for it and raise my hand. I didn't care about anything other than moving up the chain of command. After getting released from prison, I started to get involved in making some serious money. I got involved with the wrong people yet again, and things got progressively worse and more dangerous. And it culminated with me being involved in a shootout with federal agents, being arrested, being released by mistake, and then fleeing the country. You got that right there? At first, I thought it was cool to be on the run, having gotten away with everything. And then reality started to set in. I missed my family. My son Esteban had just been born, and I couldn't see him. I started to hate it, and I couldn't stand living away from home anymore. I'm in Mexico. I started to do what I thought I'd never do. I proceeded to come back to the U.S. and turn myself into the authorities. But I stopped off in Ensenada. Best thing I could have ever done. But later I realized that it wasn't me who stopped in Ensenada, but it was God who made me stop there. I started to understand why he had led me to Ensenada. And one of the main reasons is her name is Edna. And along with Edna came Gabby, her beautiful daughter. I had my share of going out with women, but I never really felt whole. I couldn't still feel that void that I felt inside deep within my heart. I couldn't feel it with work, with drinking, with women, or anything. Edna and I ended up getting married rather quickly, and shortly after, our son Diego came along. Though I was happy and in love, and so proud of my newborn son, I had an excellent job, a beautiful wife, the family I'd always wanted, yet I still felt something empty inside. I'd made lots of friends, and one of these friends ended up being my future boss. He was one of the few people I confided in as to why I was really in Mexico. And it kind of became a joke between us as to when I'd be able to come back to the United States. Eventually, one day he offered me a job, and I accepted. I wanted to give my kids the American dream. So I came back to the United States. I was scared and terrified of being caught after having been on the run for 7 years. So I'm back, working all week in Orange County, and then I head back to Mexico on the weekends to be with my family. Shortly after my return, my whole life started to change. My homeboys found out I was back, and I started to worry more about my homeboys again and my family. Though I said my wife and my kids were the most important thing in my life, my actions said differently. I got back into selling drugs, the gang life, and the worst part of it, prison gangs again. This is where my life took a downward spiral yet again. My allegiance was no longer to my family, not even to my homeboys, or the dope, but to the group gang. And being in with them, it really blew my reputation. As the stress level grew, I started to consume drugs. What I never really did as a teenager, I now started to do as an adult. I sold drugs, but I never really consumed them, at least not to the point of being an addict. Because you see, in my book, addicts are lowlights, and I wasn't going to be no lowlight. I used it just occasionally, socially, because it was cool to use just every now and then. But then it progressed and it took over. Once or twice a week, to 4, 5, 6 times a day, to not putting the pipe down at all. So I became one of those dope fiends I swore I'd never be. Before I realized it, I was a dope fiend, a lowlife. I couldn't allow anyone to know the truth that I was a meth addict. I'm someone who lived by according to how other people perceive me and judge me, not who I really was. I stopped being me so long ago that eventually my work started to take a turn for the worse, and I didn't even really know what I was anymore. I didn't know what it was. It was an identity crisis. I was making good money through my job. I started to sell drugs again. Anything illegal on the streets I was getting a cut of. But I just couldn't get consumed. I still had a void in my heart. Who I was eventually running from since the 90s eventually caught up to me, the authorities. And the very thing that had me hiding out for so many years, the situation that had caused me so many nightmares for so very long, ended up being a 60-month prison term. I was worried about nothing. But while I was in there, I picked up the Bible. And I started having these one-sided conversations with God, just one-sided. I never waited to see what he said. The weird part about it was, I wasn't going to Catholic services anymore. I had actually gotten involved with some Protestant brothers in church. The weirdo Christians. I You know which ones I'm talking about? The ones that I was swallowing for no reason? Come on. So I just didn't understand how they could be so happy all the time. They were always smiling, and I was starting to see God when I was in there. I read my Bible and attend Bible studies, really making an effort to establish a relationship with Him. But as soon as I paroled, I left God at the gates. I got right back into my old habits again, and this time, much more involved than the last time. I continued to try to fill that void with drugs that I mentioned earlier, but it wasn't working. I was doing all kinds of stupid stuff that just made me feel even worse. But I now owned 3 shops, I had a business, I was doing things, but I still didn't feel any kind of satisfaction. I thought I was smart. I was so smart, I ended up testing dirty for a parole officer and went right back for violation. Oh, that's how smart I was. And guess what happened? I remembered God again. And I started reading the Bible again. I didn't even go to service this time, but I talked to Him. I talked to Him about Him to people. But not all the time, because I wasn't one of those weirdo Christians, you know? Before the court date or parole hearing, all the important times. While all this is going on, my wife was invited to a Christian church. She and her children got involved with it, and they loved it. Me, I'm not really sure what to think. I mean, I was okay with reading the Bible and all that, but did I want my family hanging around the weirdo Christians? I saw what it was doing to them, making them, making all kinds of changes in their attitude. I promised my wife that I'd go with her when I got out, and I did. I even got baptized. And not just to quiet my critics, I mean, I really wanted to change my life. I saw what it was doing with my family, and I wanted to be a part of it. But my old lifestyle continued to call upon me. So again, I got involved. I still go to church, but less and less, and eventually I stopped going altogether. My wife and kids started to become less and less important yet again. I'd already been involved in so much in recent violence. I mean, I even got a shootout on Thanksgiving morning. I ended up in the hospital before we even opened up the turkey. I got stabbed 18 times, and I got into a number of fights. One day, approximately 6 months later, a close friend told me, "Rudy, you need to slow down, bro." I looked at him like, "What are you talking about?" He said, "You need to stop and smell the roses." I said, "Come again, you're speaking to me in Chinese. I have no idea what you're talking about. What do you mean smell the roses? What roses?" And he said I was like a gardener who was putting all this effort into his garden, but never took the chance or the time to stop, pluck a rose, and enjoy its beauty or smell. Those words had a serious impact on me. Right then I decided to change my life, to stop doing all the things I've been doing. And that same night I had a talk with God. And I told him I wanted out. My wife and my kids had started to notice a slight change. She couldn't believe I was finally putting her and the kids first. My wife was happy and things were going good as I was transitioning out. But as things would turn out, it didn't happen that way. You see, a series of ugly things were going on in the neighborhood, and my name kept being brought up to the police. And eventually, the SWAT team paid me a visit at 5 o'clock in the morning, kept all my neighbors hostage for a 4-block radius. I had local police, federal agents tearing apart my house, piece by piece, interrogating my family, neighbors. It was looking all bad. I looked up at the sky and I cursed God. I couldn't believe He had done this to me. I mean, we already had an agreement, didn't we? Wasn't I doing my part, what I had said? But He just couldn't hold this part of the bargain, what was happening. So I guess God doesn't really like me telling Him what my plans were, right? So now I'm facing a lot of time again. I'm looking at life sentence one more time. Are you kidding me, God? I wanted no part of Him. If this is how He betrays His people, I said, I don't need you. So here I am yet again, hurting my family. The only really innocent ones in all this story. My daughter was only 9 days old when all this madness started again. My kids weren't sure of anything that I would tell them anymore. I had broken so many promises to them that they would never trust me again. So I'm back in the county jail, and I'm in survival mode, doing what I had to do to get back in the game. My lawyer was able to give me a 5-year deal. Sweet. I immediately signed before the DA changed his mind. But this time, I didn't have the same mindset. Things weren't quite the same. My criminal career culminated in prison with a life-altering decision that I never thought I'd make. I wanted a new life. I finally got tired of it. I finally got tired of hurting my wife and kids. I didn't even know how to explain to them that the situation I was in would turn my 5 years into a life sentence. And I don't want to raise my kids to prison visiting rooms anymore. I couldn't bear the thought of hurting my son or daughters and seeing their eyes fill up with tears again when I told them I'd never be coming home. That night, when my son was asleep, and I couldn't do while he was awake, I got on my knees. I turned off the lights, and I cried out to God. And I told him that if He was real, to manifest Himself to me and to show me the way. I had a do or die decision to